My machine is not sewing properly. Breaking the thread. It's skipping stitches. Do not panic, we can solve it. It happens many times that our sewing machine is not sewing properly, and the causes are usually the same. Maybe it's not threaded properly, or the needle is not the proper one to sew that fabric, or maybe there's a tension problem going on. And the solutions are almost always the same, but let's see them step by step. If you like sewing and you're new around here, consider subscribing. I upload twice a week and that way you don't miss anything. We learn a lot every day and we do loads. So don't forget to subscribe, and I'll leave you here my Instagram account as well in case you want to have a look. The first problem we usually have is that our thread keeps breaking. That can mean that is not good quality one. There's a saying in Spanish that says, I'm so poor that I buy everything expensive, because you end up spending more if you buy a lot of cheap things than if you buy a good quality something. So get some good quality threads, because you'll notice that. Of course, check the tension. It's very difficult to tell someone you need to use this tension number when you don't know exactly the composition of the fabric. If you're using cotton, there are a million different cottons, and maybe the poplin you're using is thicker than the one I'm using. So in one of the scraps, after cutting your pattern, try the tension and make sure it's the right one, not too tight and not too loose. Of course, make sure your machine is properly threaded and you're not missing any step, because that can easily cause the thread to break, or even the thread not to sew anything. It can happen both ways, or too much or nothing. So just check that, and check out the bobbin as well, because maybe you have a knot somewhere or it's not properly threaded, and that can cause breaking as well. And if you check all of this and nothing works, make sure you're using the right needle. Try a different needle, don't be afraid of changing it. Just change it in a minute and see how it works. Maybe it's just only a number, maybe it's not that much of a difference, but it can mean that the needle is breaking the thread, or maybe it's not even sewing, but that can change everything. The machine is skipping stitches. This can happen when we switch to different fabrics we don't usually work with. For example, if we are working with stretch or thicker fabrics, you need to make sure again about the tension and the needle, because this can be a game changer. So check that out, and of course as well, any threading, if the machine is not properly threaded, it can cause that. And if this doesn't work, if it's still skipping stitches, maybe what you need to do is clean it. Sometimes a bit of cleaning and a bit of grease can make a whole difference. So just make sure your machine is properly clean, and that will help you a lot when sewing. Another problem can be that the bobbin is making a whole nest underneath your fabric. This can be that the machine is badly threaded. Something is not threaded properly, something is loose for it to cause that kind of kerfuffle. And check out the tension as well, and of course keep your machine clean, because that can cause it as well. The fabric is getting stuck and it doesn't seem to go on with the sewing. This is quite common, especially for sewing different kinds of fabric, thicker or stretchy materials that need a different kind of presser foot. In that case, just change it, just make sure maybe you need a double one, maybe you need one of these plastic little foot, and then that will make your job much easier, and you can do it properly then. So, and another thing is that maybe the little teeth that help you drag your fabric are dirty, or maybe they are damaged. That's a bit more complicated because you will need to take it to the technician and make sure they haven't come down. Some machines have this little lever in which you can take the feet down in case you want to embroider something, sew buttons or things like that. So just make sure they're properly placed and they're not down. The machine is making a strange noise you haven't heard before. Just make sure again that the machine is clean and it's greased as well. The dust goes everywhere, lint accumulates, and it can make the machine work very badly and poorly, and you can even break it. So just make sure of this and you get rid of a lot of problems. And apart from that, maybe your needle is just a bit bent. Sometimes that happens. Thicker fabrics like denim, or maybe if you've sewn a zipper, they've bent your needle a little bit. So just make sure your needle is nice and straight, because it can be hitting the plate or down the bobbin if it's a bit bent. So have a look at that. And the last thing that is not very common is that something is a bit loose in there. Maybe there's a screw that's not properly screwed, or maybe there's something else missing. So just make sure you don't hear anything else that makes you worry. Sewing is not extremely difficult, but we're working with a machine, and sometimes when something doesn't work out, we think it's something a bit more serious than what it usually is. If we check that the machine is properly clean and greased, if we check the needle, the tensions and the presser foot, everything will go smoothly, or should go smoothly at least. I've repeated myself because it's always more or less the same problems and the same solutions. So just check all that. If something a bit more serious is not working, maybe you should take it to the technician. If your little teeth aren't coming up, or if the bobbin, I don't know, if something is loose in there in the engine, that's of course should go to the technicians, but the rest we can solve ourselves. So if you like sewing and this kind of content, consider subscribing, and that way you don't miss anything. And I'll see you around. Bye.